In today's lesson, we are going to be talking about the fall of Rome. And it's important that we recognize that we're not talking about the fall of all of the Roman Empire. We're only talking about the fall of the Western Empire. And so, in our lesson today, you're going to need your headphones, your notebook. And in the goal of our lesson, I want you to be able to identify the reasons why the Western Roman Empire fell. And you'll hear a lot, the fall of Rome, but this is one thing I want you to lock into your brains right now. We are only talking about the fall of the Western Empire. So let's talk about some problems with the empire. We're looking at the year 284 AD, and this is a review. Diocletian is the emperor, and his empire is just too big. He is not able to properly administer this whole giant empire that he has. So he has a great idea, and that idea is he is going to divide his large empire into two. And so he takes his big empire and he divides it. It's divided into west and east, and Diocletian takes the east side and gives the west side to Maximian. But what's important that we remember out of this is that Diocletian divides the empire. And that's what I always like to tell kids to help you remember that Diocletian divides the empire. Okay. So we're going to compare the Western and Eastern Empire. So the Western Roman Empire's capital is Rome. The Western Empire is at most very poor. It depends quite a lot on its provinces for its resources and its wealth. It's also very rural. If you think about a lot of France and England and Spain, it's not really developed because it's a newer civilization. Also in the Western Roman Empire, they speak the Latin language. Now, conversely, when we look at the Eastern Roman Empire, it has places that you've learned in the past: Egypt, Athens, Byzantium, or Constantinople. The Eastern Empire is very, very rich. If you think about, for example, Egypt, it's very fertile. There's lots and lots of resources coming out of that area, like grain. Athens is the area that has lots of philosophy and thinking and learning. And so as a result, the Eastern Roman Empire is very rich. It's also more urban. There's many more developed cities in the Eastern Empire compared to the West. It's also an older civilization. You spent all of 6th grade and this part of 7th grade learning about these older civilizations of the Eastern Empire. And in the Eastern Empire, they spoke the Greek language. And so if we think like a historian, the stronger, better empire is going to be the East. And much like Diocletian, I would much rather be the emperor of the East rather than the West, because the East is much more settled. It's going to be much easier. And so we have a divided empire, West and East, which is each ruled separately. And so even though this is all the Roman Empire, it's really two at this point. So if we want to think which has a better chance for survival, if we think about this, it's probably going to be the Eastern Empire because it's much more settled. Okay, another thing that we want to review is Christianity. Constantine is a leader of the Roman Empire, and if we remember, he sees a golden cross in the sky and interprets it as a sign from God that he should convert to Christianity, which he then does. For a short time, Constantine is able to take that empire that was divided by Diocletian and create a new capital city of this Roman Empire, and he calls it Constantinople, which is named after himself. However, he locates this in the east. So even though it's the Roman Empire under Constantine, the capital is not Rome. It's his new city, Constantinople. However, after Constantine, the empire splits again, and we have two empires, west and east, with two capital cities. In the east, the capital is going to stay Constantinople, while in the west, Rome becomes the capital again. Now, the West has a lot of problems. The first is inflation, and inflation has to do with money. When you have inflation, you have things like taxes becoming too high. People found it difficult to meet the taxes that they were required to pay. And so that was a very difficult thing, especially for the plebeians. A second problem when we talk about money is that Rome is too dependent on its provinces. Rome needs its provinces for its wealth. So if we think about Rome being dependent on provinces, and provinces are places outside of Rome, like Gaul or Spain or Britain, then if Rome is to lose these provinces, that's going to be a very bad thing for Rome. So keep that in mind. Another problem is rich versus poor. We talked about this with Greece if you think back. In Rome, over time during the empire portion, the rich get really rich. Conversely, the poor became very poor. And a result of this is a loss of patriotism. People are not as patriotic. They're not as devoted to Rome as they were under the Roman Republic. And so this is going to be a great big problem for the Western Roman Empire. However, the biggest problem the Western Empire has is barbarians. Barbarians start to invade the empire. And so different barbarian tribes attack Rome at different times and in different places, specifically in its provinces, causing lots and lots of trouble. And so we have people like Visigoths, Vandals, Huns, and Ostrogoths who are coming into Rome, attacking and causing many problems for the Roman Empire. One problem that they are causing is that along the borders, different tribes, specifically German tribes, start to run. So, for example, if the Huns are attacking, then the Germans who live along the borders of Rome will come into Rome itself and seek refuge. And so we have people like the Huns who are attacking, and Germans are fleeing into Rome for safety. And so we have Rome, and look down here, we have a new vocabulary word that we are going to add to our notebook. We have Rome hiring mercenaries. And what is a mercenary? A mercenary is a soldier who fights for pay rather than for his or her countries. And the Romans hire specifically those Germans who are fleeing from the borders here into Rome itself, running from people like the Vandals and the Huns and the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths. So we're under barbarian attacks. The Romans can't fight the barbarians, so they hire mercenary German soldiers who fight against other tribes who are attacking. This is going to be a problem because those German mercenaries are not exactly loyal to the Roman Empire. So in the year 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire falls to barbarian invaders. So the Western Roman Empire is no longer standing as an empire. Instead, it's now been conquered by barbarians who have, over the last century, been attacking, trying to cause trouble for Rome. Now, This is only the west. This is only this tan portion here. Because the east, which is this darker brown portion, does not fall. The Eastern Roman Empire stands for another 1,000 years. They fall in the year 1453 when they are invaded and conquered by Ottoman Turks. So the Eastern Roman Empire has its power kind of contained for another 1,000 years. And while the Eastern Empire will grow and shrink and grow and shrink, largely it does not fall until 1453. Sometimes history is confusing. So if you lived in Constantinople in, say, the year 800 CE, you would call yourself a Roman because you were part of the Eastern Roman Empire. However, historians think this is confusing. And so moving forward, the Eastern Roman Empire is going to be called the Byzantine Empire. And that name comes from the name of Constantinople before Constantine, which was Byzantium. So moving forward, after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire will be called the Byzantine Empire. So because this whole Western Empire falls, there's a lot of problems in Europe. The result of the fall of the Western Roman Empire is disorder and weak central government. That means that these barbarians who attack and attempt to be the leaders and emperors of Rome don't really know what they're doing. They don't know how to administer this whole empire. So the Ostrogoths are the ones who take over Rome, the city. Their leader, Odoacer, is the first barbarian king of Rome. He's very unsuccessful at this because he doesn't know how to be the leader of a large empire. As a result, people leave Roman cities. They find that they're no longer safe because of these barbarians, because of the disorder of these new barbarian kings. And so they move out into the country. They move into Gaul. They move into Spain. And they create small kingdoms. And these kingdoms are small groups of people who kind of huddle together. And they do that for safety. Now, if you think back to any fairy tale that you've ever heard, they always take place in small kingdoms. And this goes back to what happens after the fall of Rome. People may leave Rome and go into Gaul, and they form a very small kingdom. And they elect a leader who eventually will become king. These fairy tales are based on these tiny kingdoms that start to pop up around Europe because of the fall of Rome. People no longer could stay in cities. And so, in order to protect themselves from barbarians and to be able to maybe grow enough food to survive, they huddle together in these small kingdoms for survival. Another result of the fall of the Roman Empire is that learning declines. Knowledge of the world and past are forgotten. And this is going to be the beginning of our next unit, the Middle Ages. People don't remember the medicine and the science and the technology and the engineering and the literature and the art and the architecture of the past because they don't have time. In fact, they don't have time for learning and learning how to read and remembering the great advancements of the Greeks and the Romans. Instead, they're just struggling to day live, just looking for enough food to survive. And so we're going to find in the next 500 years, culture and civilization actually goes backwards. It takes about 500 years for people to get back to the point where they were during the Roman Empire. So you're going to see 500 years where people actually know less than they did 500 years before, which is quite different. And so here we have the fall of the Western Roman Empire. And so I want to take a look at our goals for today. We want to be able to identify the reasons the Western Roman Empire fell. And our main reason is these barbarians weakened the empire. I hope that this helps you to understand the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Barbarians are a big part of it. And another thing that we also want to remember is that the Eastern Roman Empire does not fall. It thrives and becomes referred to as the Byzantine Empire.